Namo Vishmadaya Krishna Vastavutali Shrimad Bhaktivedanta Swami Nami Namaste Saraswati Devi Guravani Pachani Caesar. So I'm supposed to talk about Srila Prabhupada tonight. And I remember right from start, I was in a very desperate position when I was young. I went through a very difficult period of my life. And I realized the only solution is to find God. That was my conclusion. There's only way, this is actually the only thing that's worthwhile living, to develop our relationship with God. I came to that state in my desperation. Krishna, in general, he works like this. People need a good kick in the head before they have a reality check, before they wake up. And so I was praying to Krishna to give me, God, to give me show me the way, how to do it. I remember one day I was sitting in my room and all of a sudden I felt, this is all true now, I felt some force pushing me out of the door. And I knew this is a moment. It was very supernatural. This is a moment that I'm going to get the message. And I walked out of the door and over the hill, and I saw my friend coming on the other side. And I heard myself saying, like in a dream, I said, whatever you have, give it to me. He said, what do I have? I said, you have something. He said, oh yes, my mother, she got a book. She got a book, and I know you might be interested. It was the Ishopanishad. It was totally, and I said, thank you very much. Even without looking at the book, I said, I'm waiting for this book for a long time. And I read it overnight, I couldn't stop reading. By 4 o'clock in the morning, it was clear to me. This is it. I found what I wanted to do, to practice Krishna consciousness. I had no idea what Krishna is God is. I had Krishna hanging over my bed, but I didn't know it was Krishna. Some Hindu god. And I remember that evening before, this very same friend came, and he was in a very disturbed condition. In fact, he wanted to jump off the roof. And I consoled him. And then in the middle of this, I said, let's sing. I play guitar. I said, well, let's sing something. So I sang something to cheer him up. And all of a sudden, the Hare Krishna mantra that I had heard in college from a neighbor's apartment came into my mind. And we both started chanting Hare Krishna. It was unreal. And I didn't know what it was even. So after some time, he was happy, I was happy. I said, what is it? Why are we chanting like this? So Krishna had his own way of tying his people in a very miraculous way. And so by 4 o'clock I decided to go to the temple. By 10 o'clock I found somebody who knew where the temple were. I walked into the temple and I said, can I join this? And the devotee in charge said, well, are you sure about that? I said, yes, I want to join them. I absolutely sure. I said, take this. And he gave me a white ball. And I didn't know what it is. He said, what is it? He said, eat it. Whole thing? He said, yes. So I ate it. How do you like it? I said, that's simply wonderful. And he said, that's what we call it. It was a simply wonderful. So there are so many little things coming together. And I joined. A couple of days later, I was standing on the street. It was the 1st January 1972, and I distributed the same book I got just a couple of days before, in the cold of the winter. It was very cold in Germany. And so read the book, decided to joined the Hare Krishna movement, started distributing books. It went from one day to another. And then Prabhupada came. And it was just 4 months in the movement. It must have been in May when Prabhupada came. And I tried to hear in the Brahmacharya ashram Prabhupada's lectures, and I couldn't understand half of it. When Prabhupada talks about birds, he talks about birds. There are many birds. So what is a bird? Bird is a bird. And so many things. Elephant. I didn't know what an elephant was. Prabhupada had a particular kind of way of half the tape I couldn't understand. Prabhupada came to the airport in Amsterdam. And I rushed upstairs. Somehow or other, I knew the immigration is upstairs. And there was Prabhupada. I was alone. And he waved me. And I still have the picture. I didn't bring it. I still have that picture. I pulled up my camera and he waved me like this. I was the only person around. So I was very happy. Then I went down, and Prabhupada gave an introduction in the VIP lounge, and I could understand every single word he said. And I said, in the morning I listened to the tape, I could 50% I could understand. Now I can understand what happened. And I listened to the same tape again, I could understand every single word. It was a miracle from one moment into another that Prabhupada allowed me to understand. So it was the whole thing was extremely miraculous, and I know many, many devotees have the same experience. There was some magic there when Prabhupada appeared in our life. It was totally magical, the way how he came, and in the aftermath it was magical. And in many ways, you knew when Prabhupada, when I saw him, I knew this is my father. I knew this is my spiritual father. He even resembled my physical father. So this is my spiritual father. And he looked at the devotees, and so I asked him on a morning walk some question. And he said, the main thing is that you understand that I created your good fortune. That was very deep. I created your good fortune. And I remember we went on a morning walk, and it was only 3 of us, really, 4. Akurananda Swami, who just took sannyas, Shivananda Swami, who was his servant, Prabhupada, and myself. And we walked in the Vondelpark in Amsterdam. And it was a park, it was full of hippies, maybe 5,000 hippies there, but it was the height of the hippie days. We had, camping out there in this huge park in the middle of, and we went around a bend, and there was a hippie boy and a girl, and they were doing it. They were completely naked. And I looked at Srila Prabhupada. He looked at me like this, very stern, like this he went, He was, that I looked at him or I looked at them, he went like this, so don't do that, It was amazing. He could read my mind. Prabhupada could read your mind. Sometimes if you would talk something, he would, in the middle of a sentence, he'd say, yeah, I understand it, it's because of that and that and that. So he was very mystical, a very mystical person who was very humble. I give you another example. I went one time with Prabhupada on a morning walk. It was here, on this street behind, same street. And I stepped on Prabhupada's heels. I stepped on his heel while we were walking. And Prabhupada turned around and put his cane on my breast and pushed. And they said, are you now satisfied? And I said, oh, Prabhupada, I feel so sorry, are you not satisfied? I mean, how can I be satisfied stepping on Prabhupada's feet, But he just wanted to shock me. He said, Prabhupada, I'm so sorry. He said, no, that's all right. He didn't care. He didn't care. He said, that's all right. He just stepped on his heel. He didn't be upset. He just took it as anything else. That's Krishna's mercy. Whatever would come to Prabhupada, whether it's people or what events, it was all Krishna's mercy. He was living in this consciousness. That's Krishna doing in one of his parts and parcels. And then he said, now this is a couple years later actually, he said, how long are you going to stay in Vrindavan for? I said, well, Prabhupada, tomorrow morning I go back to Germany. He said, oh no, he said, no. Stay at least 3 weeks. And he looked up and said, just enjoy the spiritual atmosphere. It was so nice. He invited me to stay in Vrindavan for 3 weeks. He said, just enjoy the spiritual atmosphere. It was so personal, so kind. And so the next week I had the opportunity to sit right under that tree where Prabhupada was singing in the courtyard. By the way, as far as this tree is concerned, the tree has a very special history that only very few people know in ISKCON. I talked, can I have some water? Yeah. I talked with Narottam Gupta, who was Prabhupada's doctor. Narottam Gupta told me that when he had to go to Delhi, he used to take a tonga, a horse cart, from here, from Vrindavan town to the trunk road, the Agra-Delhi trunk road, to take a bus. And he saw, whenever he drove by this property, this is way before Prabhupada came to the West. He was not even sannyasi yet. He was sitting under this very tree, which is now in the Krishna Balaram temple, and he was singing with cartels completely by himself. Imagine that one. That's maybe 15 years before we opened the temple. He was already sitting in this property. God knows what went on between him and Krishna. Nobody can understand. You know? This very special person. At Bhavananda, he told me personally, Bhavananda Prabhu, that Prabhupada one time talked to him at night, and he said, I didn't want to come here, actually. I didn't want to come to the material world, he said, but Krishna asked me. And I said, my Lord, but this is a terrible place. And Krishna said to me, don't worry, I take care of you. Everything will be all right. So you see that Prabhupada actually came from this, he was a Vaikuntha man, he came from the spiritual world, he's a Shakti Avatar. He's not an ordinary human being. And he displayed this, he displayed his opulences at many, many times. That people, sometimes he would walk and some devotees saw there was a worm, Prabhupada stepped on the worm. But when the devotee was thinking, oh my God, the worm, he couldn't even see Prabhupada's footprint. There was no footprint in the what is that beach in Los Angeles? The
Venice Beach?
Venice Beach. There was no footprint in the ground. He was very special. So I remember there was one incident that I was organizing a festival in Sweden. Prabhupada came in Sweden. And so in that lecture, there was, Prabhupada talked about the 4 classes of men, namely first class, second class, third class, fourth class. Namely, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra, the 4 classes of men. He talked. And so then after the class, he asked for some questions. It was Uppsala University, 1975. And he asked some questions, as anybody has a question. A young student stood up, very rebellious time that was. He said, of course you think you're first class. A first class man, sitting on a high throne, everybody bows down in front of you. And my blood was boiling. If Prabhupada would have told me, get him, I would have strangled him to death. I was so angry, you know, to impose on Prabhupada such a foolish material concept. And Prabhupada said, no, like this, almost pleading with him. He said, no, don't think like that. He was pleading with him, don't think like that. And then he said, very silent, there was a silence, he said, actually I'm a 5th class man. And everybody was shocked, the whole room was silent. And then Prabhupada said, because I'm the servant of everyone. And I saw from there, behind his spectacles, 2 big tears came down his cheeks. You know, he cried for a moment, you know, that somebody would think that he would put himself on a high throne, but actually he was the most humble of all of us. So he had all the opulences of a great Vaishnava. He was extremely humble, and he didn't pretend to know when he didn't know. This may sound strange for you, but there was a situation which describes Prabhupada's mentality. One time he was sitting together with all his big men. There was Tamal, Krishna Goswami was there, and Giriraj, and Hansaduta maybe. And so Prabhupada asked a question. He said, we are discussing this problem. There was a problem there. What is your opinion, Tamal Krishna Goswami? And Tamal Krishna Goswami spoke. And Prabhupada said, not a good idea. Giriraj Swami, what is your idea? He spoke. Prabhupada said, not a good idea. Hansaduta, what is your idea? So the finger went around. He asked every single person in the room, and every time Prabhupada heard it, the verdict, and he said, not a good idea. Then Tamal said, but Prabhupada, what is your idea? And Prabhupada said, I don't have an idea. That's why I'm asking you. That's why I'm asking you. I don't have an idea. And then he said, well, let's change the subject. Let's see what Krishna says. Let's change the subject. And so they talked about something else. After half an hour, Prabhupada said, now I know what to do. And he came forward with his most wonderful explanation, what to do. And Tamal Krishna Goswami asked Prabhupada, Prabhupada, how did you know that? You said a half an hour ago you had no idea. He said, but Krishna told me. This is how Prabhupada would work. You know, that he was listening to Krishna. He was always attentive to Krishna. You know, he didn't claim to know everything. So sometimes if he didn't know, he would just ask Krishna, Krishna, how do I do this? What is the best solution? And Krishna would tell him. He had that sort of mentality, you know, always being completely Like Krishna surrender to me utterly. This famous verse in Bhagavad-Gita. So utterly means completely. So he was completely surrendered to Krishna. Whatever happened, even when I stepped on his heel, he said, well, that's all right. He didn't mind. You know, if somebody, you give him something wonderful. I remember we picked him up in an old Peugeot car. It was a rotten piece of metal. We picked him up from the airport at that time. He didn't mind. And he came to London, he was picked up in a Rolls Royce. He didn't mind. For him was this gold, pebble or sand, all the same. Whatever Krishna gave him. And therefore, whoever would come, Prabhupada would accept him. He would accept anybody that would come and render service. He said, you come. He would encourage devotees, always. And when he heard that some devotee was hurt, he was very concerned. You know, I remember Hari Kesh told me one time that he had this graphic display of all, he was temple president at that time, at least from what he told me, in New York. And he had this graphic display of the whole temple. And Prabhupada came and said, what is this display here? And see, it's about Prabhupada. With one view I can see who's on Sankirtan, who's distributing books, who's doing the deities, who's cooking, who's cleaning, who's preaching, who's... Prabhupada said, with one look he could see everything. And Prabhupada said to him, but if there's no love and trust, he said, this will fail. He said, this will fail. You see, the emphasis was on love and trust. So important. Today we were talking that Krishna likes the most if he serve a devotee, if he encourage devotees. That's most pleasing to Krishna. Like Krishna also says, one who preaches his knowledge is most dear to me. No one is more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear. That's Krishna's attitude. Because Krishna is the greatest servant of all. He's a great... Think about it. Hardly anybody says thank you very much. Even devotees, we don't thank Krishna on our knees every day. Whatever he gives us. That we can here be in Vrindavan. That we here see Radhasham and Krishna Balaram. That the sun is shining, we have beautiful weather here. That the prasadam is great. There's so many wonderful things we have. That we can go to Radha Kund, Shama Kund, to Govardhan. That we have Bhagavad-Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. That we have prasadam, that we have japa. I mean, what do we have what Christians don't have? We have so many things. We have Ganga, we have Yamuna. There's no end to the opulences of the Hare Krishna movement that Prabhupada gave us. We had nothing in the West. He gave us so much. He was revealing the whole kingdom of God, practically speaking, to us. I remember I was told that one time he was preaching in Radha Damodar temple, and he said everything in Vrindavan is Krishna conscious. Even the monkeys and even the birds, and the monkeys were very loud. The monkeys and the birds, very loud. He said even the monkeys and the birds. And there was dead silence for a moment. And then Prabhupada said, he lifted it like this. Then everything, he said, that's Krishna. That's Krishna. He lifted his finger like this and everybody started screaming again. He said, that's Krishna. So he was very much in touch with Krishna. One who sees me everywhere and sees everything in me, I'm never lost to him. I remember in the last hours, I had the good fortune, actually, in his last 3 weeks, Prabhupada wanted from every yatra in the world some devotee to come. And so somehow other, in Germany the choice fell on me. And I went over there, and I remember I came, Prabhupada was very sick. You could see hardly had any flesh on his body. He was like a bag of bones. He was lying on his bed. And I came in the afternoon, and in the afternoon he said, after 5-10 minutes, he said, somebody should sing. So Tamar Krishna Goswami said, is there anybody who can sing? I said, well, I can sing. You can play harmonium? Yes. So I played for Prabhupada 2 hours. And then Prabhupada said, and you should come back next day. So I came at 2 o'clock, and I sang from 2 o'clock up to 8 o'clock, which is 6 hours. And when I was finished, he said, and he should come again. And so every single day, up to the very last day, I sang in the morning, Prabhupada left in the evening. I had that good fortune to sing for him, 6 hours in a stretch, and it was pure pleasure. Now I can't see myself doing that, but I chanted 6 hours every single day, and I saw so many wonderful things going on at that time. I remember one time Prabhupada wanted to take medicine, and he asked Bhakti True Swami. So Bhakti True Swami gave him medicine. And Prabhupada took some medicine. This was maybe 3 days before he left. And he said, "Did you close the bottle?" Something very small, one would think. And he said, "No, Srila Prabhupada, I forgot." He said, "That is your disease." He said, "All of you. You know how to open bottles, you don't know how to close them. You start so many new things, and you don't see the consequences." That's what he said. You know, in this little example of somebody not closing the bottle, he expounded the whole philosophy, particularly of Western people. Always try something new, something different. You know, it has to be different, otherwise it's not good. And then he said, you know how to live, but you don't know how to die. And so I have to show you. That was a consequence of this discussion. And then little later he called Yadubai to tell him that he should film it. He should film his demise. This is why it was filmed. Because Prabhupada said, I have to show you how to die. It was very awesome. It was very awesome. And even on the last day, he lifted up his hand. All of a sudden, already he was... And you know, death is coming. I saw my brother die. I saw my father die. You know, death is coming. He lifted up his hand, very peaceful. Not a finger was trembling or moving. The hand went up like this. Everybody stopped. And he said, everything moving and non-moving. He lifted his finger like this. 5 hours before he left his body or something. He said, everything moving and non-moving, there's nothing but Krishna. This consciousness is called Krishna consciousness. And the next thing I remember is that he said, Hare Krishna, and he was gone. He didn't even complete the word Krishna. He was already gone. And a huge kirtan went on. So he was extremely extraordinary. I remember there was a famous Zen, when Prabhupada came to Germany, there was a famous Zen Buddhist, his name is Professor Durkheim. He comes from a hugely famous aristocratic family in Germany, since thousands, at least 1,500 years. And he was a very famous man because he brought Zen Buddhism to Europe, together with one Jesuit, Father Lassalle. Every Zen Buddhist in Europe knows him. My sister has become a Zen Buddhist since 40 years. And when she told her teacher that I knew her master, she was shocked, namely this Durkheim. So Durkheim came, and we had a good talk on the way from the railway station. I asked him a riddle. Everybody knows what a riddle is? A riddle. Yeah, a riddle, you know. And I don't remember anymore what the riddle was, but I know I asked many people, nobody could solve this riddle. It was very complex. And I asked him this riddle. He said, well, let me think. After 2 minutes, he said, I got it. And he knew it. So he was a very intelligent man. So he came and saw Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, Professor Durkheim, I'm so glad that you came. Now, what is your philosophy? And Durkheim started expounding Zen philosophy. And then after some time, Prabhupada became restless. And Durkheim said, Swamiji, how do you like it? And Prabhupada said to this intelligent man, not very intelligent. The man was shocked. Prabhupada said, not very intelligent. And then he inquired, why Swamiji? And Prabhupada gave this wonderful explanation. It was a gorgeous explanation why it was not intelligent, giving him the straight Siddhanta of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Man was so impressed. He went down on his knee and paid his full dandavat in front of Prabhupada, grabbed his foot and said, please accept me as your younger brother. He was 2 months younger than Prabhupada. So he knew that. He read up on Prabhupada. 2 months younger, accept me as your younger brother. And they understood each other so well. I have many pictures with Durkheim, Prabhupada and myself right in the middle because I acted as a translator. And that Durkheim, when we drove back to the Frankfurt railway station, he said to me, Prithu Das, he said, I've been in India, I've met many swamis, many gurus, many sadhus, many highly placed personalities, religious personalities all over the world. He said, I've never met a person like your Swami Prabhupada, never. He said, this is a great day in my life. I was so happy when he said that. So he got it, he understood it, that Prabhupada was huge. He was huge from every point of view. He was a highly enlightened person. He was so renounced. We cannot even imagine how renounced Prabhupada was. I recently read that when he was living in Radha Damodar, at one stage he was very sick. So two of his godbrothers visited him in Radha Damodar because he was highly sick. And Prabhupada was lying on the straw mat like this, in the cold, in winter, on a straw mat. And they said to him and said, you know, you should get a bed, otherwise you will die. And Prabhupada said, I want to use every paisa for book distribution. Think about that. I couldn't even see myself. I mean, I have to have a big mattress nowadays. It's like living like the princess on the pea, practically speaking. You know that story, right? Yes. Like the princess on the pea, you know. In my brahmachari days, okay, I was lying on a blanket like that, you know. But Prabhupada, he said, I want to use every. He was already 60. I said, I want to use every single paisa for book distribution. He was so austere. We cannot even imagine the austerities he went through. That somebody ran after him, this James or whatever his name was, ran after him and tried to kill him with a bread knife. When he was living in the Bowery. He tried to kill Prabhupada, and Prabhupada ran down the stairs, the guy after him with a bread knife. Fortunately, Prabhupada made it to the bottom and he ran outside, and the people outside, they immediately stopped this man. He was living under such poor conditions. I was chanting, I give you an example, I was chanting in the park in San Francisco, Golden Gate Park. It was opposite Hippie Hill. I was standing in the morning. We had a temple there. I was the president at that time. And I was sitting there and chanting, and the sun went up. It was beautiful early in the morning, and one hobo came. One hobo came with his shopping cart, where all his belongings are, and he was black. And he stopped right in front of me, and he looked at me like this, and I started getting worried. Because he just stared at me like this. So then he said to me, he said, this guy, he said, who pulled this off? He was a cool cat. He was a cool cat. You've talked about Prabhupada. This is the highest praise you can get in the black community. I had to chuckle, calling Prabhupada a cool cat, He was a cool cat, he said. He was living in the Bowery. I was living in the same house. The house was a complete mess. Everybody was drunk or taking drugs. He said, but, he looked at me, he said, Jesus was born in the barn. And then he walked away. It was sublime, that he took the parallel, that Jesus was born in a barn. So Prabhupada was living in a Bowery. Jesus was born in a barn. So he got it. He understood the greatness of Prabhupada. That Prabhupada was a cool cat. He was extremely cool. He was cooler than the coolest. Like somebody challenged Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, I'm higher than you. Then Prabhupada said, why? He said, I'm taking LSD. And Prabhupada said, well, I don't take LSD, but all my disciples took LSD, and they listened to me. So who's higher? He was wonderful. The way how he preached, the way how he expressed himself, the way how he talked, and the way how he could look into our soul. And so we were young devotees. We would give everything for Prabhupada. Prabhupada was for us our life. I remember one time Prabhupada went to London, and we were doing book distribution. We were quite big in book distribution at that time. And so he wanted to see the German Sankirtan devotees, and we all jumped into our cars. Within 5 minutes we were on the way to London. It was like that. Within 5 minutes we packed everything together. Let's go. And so we arrived, and before we even could take a bath, Prabhupada wanted to see us. And so we walked into his room in the Bhakti-Vedanta Manor, and Prabhupada was sitting there. We hardly sat down. He asked, I have one question. What is the most important verse of all? What is the most important? And my friend Haraka, we both were sitting in the same Sankirtan van. We were just reading Chaitanya Charitamrita in the evenings after Sankirtan. And so I lifted my finger, Haraka on the other side lifted his finger, and we both said simultaneously, it was like parrots. We were under Krishna's control. Yaradekataka Krishna Upadesh. Like two birds. We had no idea. It just popped out. It popped out of our throat. Yaradekataka Krishna Upadesh. And Prabhupada said, that's right. He said, that's the most important verse of all. Wherever you go, you preach Krishna. And then he said, what does Krishna Upadesh mean? And he looked at me and I said, Upadesh, Prita Prabhupada. Desh means place. That I know, but Upa, I don't know. Prabhupada said, no. It doesn't mean that. Upadesh is the highest instruction. Like we have Upadesham Rita, the Amrita of the highest instruction. It's the highest instruction of Krishna, is Upadesh. Yadadekata kra, wherever you go, tarakaha, you speak Krishna Upadesh. It's very simple. The language is very simple, Bengali. Yadadekata ka Krishna Upadesh. Very simple. And then Prabhupada said, and what is the meaning of Krishna Upadesh? And he again looked at me, and I said, I don't know, Srila Prabhupada. He said, Sarva Dharman Prijajya. Give up everything, all the mundane conceptions, all the manodharma, and surrender unto me. And I will free you from all karma. Ham tvam sarva papebhyo. And then he said, not only that you sell my books, you also have to read my books. And I neglected that instruction the most in my life. I have to admit that. I didn't read enough. If we read, I get an idea by now. If we read Bhagavatam or Prabhupada is sitting right beside us. If anybody's in a mess, he should just read. I know people that were so in a mess. I gave the advice, just read every day an hour or two. Prabhupada will be right beside you. And that's a fact. That's a fact. He's in his purpose. Prabhupada is not gone. He's not gone. I remember when he left his body, 1977, in the evening, in the morning, he was put into Samadhi. And I was asked to keep the crowds back. So I was right there at the ditch. I could see Prabhupada's form being lowered, covered with salt. And then, after the body was covered with salt, then they put a stick on his head, a bamboo rod, and then filled it up with earth till it reached the level of the rest of the land, made a little mound around the bamboo rod, and then pulled the rod out. It was there to locate the body, to locate. Not that we think Prabhupada is here. Prabhupada is here where the rod was pulled out. So I looked at that hole, at that moment, it fell in. Now the following night, something miraculously happened. I looked down this hole, and the hole somehow or other was wide. And it widened like a chimney. And I looked down, and I saw Prabhupada's body sitting there in Samadhi. And then, believe it or not, Prabhupada came in a very effulgent form, very effulgent. And he leaned on the other side, and he said these words, they think that I'm dead. And then he disappeared. And this is the truth. That people think in generally, and I also think, Prabhupada is dead. And in the absence of the Guru, you can do anything. The whole thing that ISKCON suffered so much on this understanding that people think, well, Prabhupada is gone, the heck of it. Now we can do whatever we want. He's not dead, he's there. And it's good to know, because I talked with somebody about this recently. He said, well, you got, in other words, Prabhupada's personal insurance that when you die, he's not dead, he's there. He told you personally. I never saw it from that side, So Prabhupada is not dead. He reasons ill who thinks that Vaishnava dies whilst he's living still and sound. Prabhupada is there. And I know many God brothers and God sisters that I talked over the years and said, To ask Prabhupada is easier than to ask Krishna.
Yes.
If you need help, ask Prabhupada, don't ask Krishna. He said he will help you. Many have this experience. That when we turn to Srila Prabhupada, and it's true for Prabhupada's disciples, it's true for the disciples of Prabhupada's disciples, for the next generation. And Prabhupada is a huge transcendental personality with gigantic spiritual merits. I mean, if you just think about, when you see, Prabhupada used to say, Phalena parachiyate, by the fruit you can tell the tree. It must be here somewhere. Yeah. Yeah. By the fruit you can tell the tree. Think about this enormous building that comes out in Mayapur right now. This is purely Prabhupada's piety. None of his godbrothers has anything like this coming up. It's Prabhupada's piety, excelling everybody's piety. He was so pious, such a pious person, such a deeply dedicated, even down to the point that he was suffering, lying on the floor. He said, I want to spend every single paisa for you, not for myself. Who can imitate that? Who can do such a thing? Who can do such a thing? And he was amazing that he knew all our heart. I remember there was one devotee I talked before. We talked about it today. His name is Maharati. And I talked with him before the initiation, and I knew he was a butcher. He was a butcher before he came to Krishna consciousness. So when Prabhupada, he gave him the beads, and then in the middle of it he stopped and took the beads back, like this. And he said, don't kill any animals anymore. You promise this? He said, yes, Srila Prabhupada. He gave him the beads. So Prabhupada knew. And I know the same story happened in New York. That Prabhupada initiated somebody and took his beads back and said, don't kill any animals anymore. He was an animal killer as well. He was a butcher. You know, so Prabhupada was highly enlightened. He knew he could read your mind like a book. Like a book. And he could become so angry if you violate Krishna. I remember in 1970, now what was it, 76. Jai decided in Germany that we should give up this place that we got a castle in Germany. It was a beautiful place. Srila Prabhupada likes this place, Schloss Rettershof. The name is the Court of the Saviors. It's very, the name even is very special, the Court of the Saviors, you know. So we got this place, and Jai thought it was too big. We need something small, maybe 2, 3 small centers. And so we were going, he said, you have to come, I was in charge. He said, you come with me. And Vedavyasa also, we both came. We were the 2 guys at that time in Germany, in charge, so to say. And Prabhupada, Jai went. And it was in Paris. We sat in front of Prabhupada. And he said, so why did you come? And we explained to him, Jai explained to him that this Rettershof is too big and too cumbersome, Prabhupada, but you have to have a place to live. Because there were something like 20 household apartments on the other side, part of the property that we actually could buy. And it went on and on and on. Jai had so many arguments, and Prabhupada, but I've been there. It's a very good place, right in the middle of Germany. Do you have any other reasons? And again he started, and Prabhupada was fed up. Then he said, even if your child has, with a very deep voice, he said, even if your child has been born deaf and blind, doesn't mean you kill it! Like this, you know. Does it mean you kill it? He yelled. He was blue in his face from one moment to another. Does it mean you kill it? Then again he yelled, does it mean you kill it? Like this, you know, and we were destroyed. And then he became very peaceful. He could turn it up like this, you know. He became very peaceful. And he said, no. He said, don't kill it. Develop it. He said, don't become rolling stones, like a stone that rolls in the water. He said, set moss on, like a stone that stays. Set moss on. And I've seen the same situation. I remember in 73, I think, we went to India first time. And Achyutanandam, at that time Swami, had arranged a parikram that would lead us to Srila Swami's ashram. And so we went there, and when we came back we heard that Prabhupada was very angry. And he said he wanted to speak to all the leaders. And I was at that time temple president in Heidelberg. So I elbowed my way in with all the big people, and I sat right there. And so Prabhupada says, so where have you been? And then Achyutananda Maharaj explained, well, we have been there and there. Prabhupada said, oh, you have been invited. Yes? I said, yes. How come you have been invited? I have not been invited. What does that mean? Disciples have been invited, Guru has not been invited. What does that mean? Everybody fell back, you know, he screamed, you know. Then he said, and what was the preaching? He said, well, Prabhupada, they were praising you actually. Then Prabhupada, what would they say? Well, they said that Swami Bon, he went to London and he spoke to royalties, but he couldn't make any headways. But Bhakti-Vedanta, he spoke to the hippies and to the drunkards and to the methadone monsters and the acid heads and the speed freaks. And he met many devotees. Prabhupada said, who was in the audience? He said, many respectable gentlemen. Prabhupada said, what do you think that these people think? And I could convince only drug addicts and hippies. What about Swab Damodar? He's a PhD. What about Sadaputa? He's a PhD. Don't you think how they're insulting me? We were very shocked. Then he said, and what happened then? And we said, well, Srila Prabhupada, we took prasadam. Did you have to pay for it? Yes. And Prabhupada slammed his fist on the table as hard as he could and said, not only you have to hear the insults of your guru, you even pay for it. Don't do this ever again. Like this, you know. Your spiritual life is scarred, he said. I was in shock. And then he said, now you should go. So he was so angry, he could become very angry for Krishna, and he could become very angry for his movement. But if you step on his heel, he didn't mind. He didn't take serious. Anything towards himself, that this man says to him, that you of course think you're number one. Prabhupada didn't take any offense. For himself, he didn't take any offense. But if you offend Krishna or the devotees, in Calcutta, the Naxalites were attacking the devotees on the stage. They tried to pull one devotee open. Prabhupada, he was singing Jai Radharama. He jumped up and he took his castle and knocked the guy on his head. The blood appeared on his head. Prabhupada knocked him into the head. He was so angry, he could be furious that here was a person who tried to hurt one of his devotees. Prabhupada became so angry. So Prabhupada was extremely peaceful. Anybody who has been in Prabhupada's room, it was like entering into a spaceship. It was a complete different atmosphere. I've been in Prabhupada's room a couple of times. I remember one time, by the way, that UA tape recorder that's here, I bought that for Prabhupada, that Prabhupada translated with. I was told that Prabhupada needed a dictaphone, so I went into a shop from Sankirtan and bought that, and it's right here. That's the same UA tape recorder. I gave that to him. So I lost the point there. What was I talking just before? Yes. So one time when we went to Paris, it was Paris. I bought for Prabhupada a nice blanket, a mohair blanket. Everybody knows mohair? It's a very soft wool, very light. And I was very fond of it. I brought it, I wanted to give it to Prabhupada personally, but it was not possible. There was always a secretary in between. And so I asked Himavadi, how do I do it? He said, just sit on the stairs and wait till the secretary who sits in the room before, when he has to go to the toilet, then you go in. So I went in. The secretary left, went to the toilet, I knocked at the door. Prabhupada said, yes. So I went in, and Prabhupada opened the door. He was kind of surprised that I came. I said, so? I said, Srila Prabhupada, I brought you a blanket. Oh, he said, oh, come in, come in. So I went there, I gave him the blanket, and Prabhupada looked at the blanket, and you know, Indian blankets always have a label. And he looked and he said, aha. He said, made in Germany. He said, everything from Germany is the best. He said, when I was a medical man, I got all my medicines from Germany. So then I was sitting, he was in the middle of translating when this happened, you know. So I sat there for a moment, and now I thought that he would socialize with me. He would say, where are you from and what you do. Prabhupada wouldn't say anything. He just looked at me for some time. And then after some time, I didn't know what to say, because he was thinking I would ask him something, not that he comes down and talk to me. I had nothing to say, and so Prabhupada said, all right. And he took his dictaphone and continued. And then I crawled out of the room on my legs, you know. And then he looked at me and went like this, you know, yes, this is right. My translation work is the most important work that I do. So it was beautiful, the little interaction that I had with Srila Prabhupada at times, particularly in the last 3 weeks. I massaged his feet. I saw they were blown up like balloons, Prabhupada's feet. Because I don't know, I saw Prabhupada in London, and just in spring, and he had some urinal problem, and he had to be rushed to the hospital. And the doctor told him, he said, Swamiji, your kidney is so bad, I heard this from Harikesh, it's so bad, you need to go on a machine 2 times a week, otherwise you will not survive this winter. And Prabhupada said, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go on a machine. And the doctor said, then you will die. And so Prabhupada in his last days, I saw it immediately from the little knowledge I have, and when you have water in your feet, you can press it, it becomes white for a moment, but it becomes red again. That means you have water. The water is rising. When it hits your heart, you're done. It's a well-known phenomenon. The symptom of kidney is the water is rising, you know. And so the idea that Prabhupada was poisoned, I might as well address it, is completely ridiculous. It was already clear in spring that he wouldn't survive. And who would poison a man who's already on his deathbed? What is the motive? Every detective will ask him, who's benefiting? What's the benefit? He was already dying. There's no benefit. And by the way, since we're at it, what happened there, I might as well address it, that I heard myself that Prabhupada said, I'm poisoned. I heard it. I was standing right beside his bed, and I was very confused. But then I asked Adrida about it, who brought this doctor from Calcutta, this Ramanuja doctor, who was supposed to heal Prabhupada. And the doctor, when he came, he said, I would like to treat him as Makradvaja. And Makradvaja is a medicine that has arsenic acid in it, in very minor quantity. And he sent out somebody, I forgot, I think it was Abhiram, to procure this medicine. And Prabhupada took this medicine, and after that he I think I have been poisoned. And so Adrida asked the doctor the question, you know, I just heard that Prabhupada said he's poisoned. He said, that means he cannot take the medicine. We have to change the medicine. He took the medicine off, and there was no complaint anymore. That's what happened. It's very simple, actually. There's no rumor necessary. It's as clear as anything. He had kidney failure. He died of kidney failure. There was nothing there except natural demise. Krishna took him home in his way because Krishna thought his work is finished. He did what he could. He brought him back to the spiritual world. That actually happened. So we can be very glad that some other Prabhupada created this good fortune for us to come to his movement. Where would he be? Where would you be? Ask yourselves a question. Where would you be if Prabhupada would not have come to the West? What about yourself? What about yourself? Where would I be if Prabhupada wouldn't have crossed the ocean? He saved so many thousands of people. Even if people didn't take to his message, even if somebody buys a book, Prabhupada said if he reads only 1 page, he's benefited. If he just touches the book, he's benefited. We have no idea how much sukriti this movement is creating in the lives of millions of people by distributing books, by asking for donations, by distributing prasadam. Basically speaking, this movement has 2 functions. The one function is we pick up those who have that sukriti from past life. You cannot come to this movement without some sukriti. Not possible. pious deed, Sukriti. And then we create Sukriti in the life of so many people who are not ready for that, who don't have Sukriti. So that in their next life they can take it up. So my personal thought on is that although it appears that our movement was hugely in the Western countries, not so much yet at this stage, because it was Prabhupada, his present, and Krishna arranged it. And so many people came, they had Sukriti, and they grouped around him. Then, after Prabhupada left, gradually, after the summer comes autumn, then comes winter. But after winter, there comes spring again. And after spring, there's again summer. There will be millions of people who have collected Sukriti on the basis of the work this movement has been doing about the last 50 years. They have collected so much Sukriti, they will come back and there will be devotees. You're going to see a huge influx of devotees in Western countries because so many people bought. Even my father-in-law, he's a born-again Christian, Baptist. And when we got married, he was shocked. I was shocked too. This was in the beginning, you know, that I was supposed to marry somebody I've never talked to before, not one word. And she joined 3 days before. This is how we were married. And so she called her father, and the father was out of his mind. First he hears his daughter is joining, you know, a pagan cult. And then the next thing, 3 days later, he hears she's getting married. So he came. And he was when I picked him up from the airport, he was under shock. He said, what happened? And I explained to him what happened. And I drove very fast. He said, why are you driving so fast? He said, well, otherwise we miss the marriage. He said, well, even if you come late. He said, not possible, I'm the husband. You're the husband! You know? I mean, the whole thing was bizarre. You know, it was bizarre. I remember after we got married, he asked us to make a picture. He was filming everything. You know, he asked us, so I was standing there, my wife was standing there. He said, well, stand together. I said, no, we're not the body. He said, what do you mean? He said, come on, stand together. I said, we don't do these things in Krishna. Give her a hug. I said, give her a kiss. I said, we don't do that. What the hell are you getting married for? He said. So then he went back to, here's the story. She went back to Washington. And when he arrived at the airport, he saw in the newspaper, in the Washington Post, picture of Prabhupada, and he said, Swami Bhaktivedanta in town. So he put his luggage immediately in a luggage compartment or whatever, went to the temple in Potomac. Brahmananda, he found out where Prabhupada was. And Brahmananda didn't want to let him in. He said, well, he's with professors. I can't see him. And said, I want to see the Prabhuda. He called him the Prabhuda. I want to see the Prabhuda. He said, you can't. So my father-in-law threw him into the side because he's as big as Brahmananda. He just threw him into the side, knocked at the door and said, Swami. Prabhupada looked up. He said, what? He said, I have to talk to you. Prabhupada said, why? He said, my daughter got married to one of you men. I'm out of my mind. Please help me. So Prabhupada said, you come right inside. He told the professors, this is the most important thing right now. And he talked to my father-in-law. You can see it in the conversation for 3 hours. He took 3 hours to cool this man down. And he explained to him, this guy is a businessman, how the Hare Krishna movement is like a business. Prabhupada said, it's like a franchise. And Prabhupada said, it's like a McDonald's. Every McDonald's has the same burger, the same product. So there's a GBC on top who makes sure the product is the same, but every outlet is financially independent and manpower-wise. He said, this is how we run ISKCON. So the man was so pleased hearing from Prabhupada how the movement is run, and he came out and he said, this is a wonderful man. And then when Prabhupada went to, right after that, he went to Philadelphia. He jumped into his car with his wife, took his camera and he filmed Prabhupada throughout the Rath Yatra procession. He was so convinced. And even later when I used to talk to him, he said, "You don't understand Prabhupada," he said. "I was with him. I talked with him for 3 hours. I'm much better understanding than you of Prabhupada." So he was able to turn this man completely around. He had that sort of magic. He was so kind, so considerate, and so innocent. I remember years later I had the same kind of arrangement in Germany that I made. I was a temple president at that time. So I made a board like Harikesh had, but they were all magnetic. The names were all little magnets, name written on a magnet. And so you could take a magnet from here to there. You could take a Sankirtan devotee and put him to the kitchen, and somebody from the kitchen into the packing department for the books, etc. So Prabhupada looked at it, and I was just managing it, and all of a sudden I heard this deep voice beside, "What is that?" I said, "Oh, Srila Prabhupada, I'm sorry." He said, "No, what is it?" I said, "Prabhupada, this is a temple. You can take one devotee from here to there." And he said, "How does that work?" He was like a child. He said, "How does that work?" He said, "That's a magnet, Srila Prabhupada." "Oh, magnet, can I try it?" And so he messed up my whole board. He said, "All right, let's take this one here, and this one here, and this one here." He loved it. He completely destroyed my management. And then he laughed and he said, "German management," and walked away. So he had this childlike attitude at the same time. You know, he was gorgeous. He was a tower of strength. When we initiated in the temple in Amsterdam, I was a young devotee at that time still, and Akoyananda became initiated as a sannyasi. And that was the main thing. And so we had a Havan there. And Prabhupada came in, and there were no flowers. And he said, "Where are the flowers?" There were Prabhupada, we thought, "Where are the flowers?" He said, "Well, Prabhupada, we couldn't." "Where are the flowers?" He started screaming. Somebody said, "But Prabhupada, please, the television." "And I don't care what the television says. I care that Krishna has no flowers." You know, but Prabhupada, "I don't care. The most important thing is not the television." And they filmed this all. The most important thing is Krishna. He's the most important person. He has no flowers. And that's what I'm upset about. So Prabhupada could be very upset for Krishna. For himself, you could step on his heel. He didn't care. He didn't care. For Krishna, he would do anything. And that's why he was hugely successful. Hugely successful. He did what nobody did. He's predicted in Lochanath Maharaj's prayers in the 15th century, where Nityananda said that one great personality will come to distribute Krishna consciousness all over the world. That's Prabhupada. You know, he was a tower. And I remember there was one discussion between one Christian scholar, Porsche, and he was quite arrogant. And Prabhupada asked him, "What is your philosophy?" He always would do that. And then this scholar spoke, and then Prabhupada said, after he spoke for some time, then the guy said, "What do you think, Bhaktivedanta Swami, what is your opinion?" And Prabhupada said, he stopped, and it was hugely, he said, 2,000 years have passed, and still you don't understand Jesus. He told him, 2,000 years passed, you still don't understand Jesus. And so the scholar said, "Why? Why you say that?" Prabhupada said, "Because if you understand Jesus, you can understand Krishna. If you understand Krishna, you understand Jesus. And if you say you love Jesus, you must love Krishna, because he's a father. And Jesus said you should love your father. And if you love Krishna, you love Jesus automatically." That's what he told him. It was wonderful. And then he said something which is awesome. I heard it with my own ears. It's not on the tapes, because unfortunately Satsvarup Maharaj went out and he took the tape, he just shut the tape down, because I thought it was shocking. So he said, "Here is," I heard it with my own ears, the founder Acharya of ISKCON, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, declares to you that practically speaking Jesus is his guru. He told the professor. Of course we know that his guru was Bhaktisiddhanta, but he built him a bridge like that, you know. He said, but for the Christians, I have only to have sharp words. The man said, why sharp words? He said, because you don't follow Jesus. Jesus said you should not kill. Why are you killing? You don't follow Jesus. So he could be very strong, very kind, childlike, forgiving, he had all the good qualities. Sometimes he would eat a feast. If you would bring Prabhupada a huge plate, after lecture we would do this, so many different luxurious fruit. He would take one berry, and the rest for distribution. He was so renounced. Nothing for me, everything for Krishna. And he fits right into my life in that sense, because my mother told me, said, first God, then the others, then the others, then the others, then the others, and then yourself. And Prabhupada was incorporating this mentality, you know. First Krishna, then Krishna, then Krishna, then the others, and the others, and the others, and yourself. So we can be we are extremely fortunate, all of us that sit here in this room. You also, Mataji, everybody, that somehow or other we could get the association of Srila Prabhupada, that he could be with us and bring us to Vrindavan and to the lotus feet of Krishna. I think that's all I wanted to say today, that I can remember even. I wish you all the best in your spiritual life. Just hang on to Srila Prabhupada, and he will save you. He will save us. That's what he came for. That somebody criticized him one time. He said, Swamiji, you made a statue of yourself while you're still alive. Don't you know that you take the karma of all these people? Prabhupada said, that's what I came for. Prabhupada said, that's what I came for. You know? So, Srila Prabhupada ki